Harley Davidson will not be selling Tourers anymore. Let's get into it.
RevelatorAlf.
Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well. So this video is about a suggestion that Harley Davidson will not be selling their Tourers anymore from 2024 2025. Surely this cannot be true. Now, those of you who are into the Harley Davidson world and are a fan of Harley Davidsons will know that the Tourer motorcycles, especially in North America, in the United States and in Canada, are the motorcycles that are sold the most. Those Tourers, you know, the Road Glide, the Street Glide, the Road King, the ST models that have come out in the Tourers, you know that they are the ones that are being sold the most. So why is this even on the cards? Is this even a discussion? Well, let me tell you where I've heard this from. So basically, I heard this rumor. So if you look at any business, any whatever scale, whatever size, they're always going to be brainstorming. They're always going to be looking to the future. So let's say you and I, we may look into next week, next month. However, businesses, especially large corporations, they're looking years ahead, especially when they're trying to develop new products, the R&D that goes into developing new engines, new motorcycles in general. So they're planning years ahead. Now, of course, a company like Harley Davidson is not only looking at what motorcycles they sell now, but they're also looking about what they're going to be selling in the future, and also what will market forces dictate in the future. What will the economic impact be? What will regulations be? So they're all looking at all these different factors in terms of the environment, in terms of buying habits, in terms of how much money people will have. All these things are factored in when they're looking at researching new markets, but also developing new ideas, new products, and especially new motorcycles, but also whether they continue to sell their existing model lineup. Well, if you think this doesn't happen, then I'm afraid to say it does. It happens all the time, and this is why you'll find that motorcycles are introduced, then after say 2 or 3 years they're dropped from the model lineup, or they discontinue a model after, let's say, 10 years or so. They look at the market forces, they look at the market trends and how much of these units are being sold. They look at the future and they say, okay, we're not going to be able to sell many more of these, or we're not going to be able to sell many more of these due to legislation. What's the latest motorcycle from the Harley Davidsons that's been affected by this at a global scale? It's the Sportster. They've stopped selling those, and now they've redeveloped the Sportster with the Revolution Max engine. Okay, let's get onto the Tourer lineup. Where did all this come from? Well, this is basically one of those tabletop exercises that I heard about. It's only a rumor, but I'm sure these kind of discussions will go on all the time in companies like Harley Davidson. They're going to be looking at strategies, but it was a tabletop exercise where they were looking at the future, let's say 5-10 years time, and they're looking at the current situation now in the world, you know, with shortages, with economic impact, with wars, that kind of thing, and with COVID, supply chain issues, but also the buying habits of people and what's really going to affect people and what's going to affect their ability to get mobile for leisure. And they're looking at riders actually not making these longer journeys anymore, but they're going to be making a lot more shorter journeys, and going to be looking at motorcycles that are not really geared up for the long tour, not the long tour with air-cooled engines or air oil-cooled engines. There was a suggestion, a rumor, albeit, that on this tabletop exercise that they were going to scrap the Tourers. Can you believe it? Okay, let's just look at this a little bit and really see if it's such a bad idea. Now, let's look 5-10 years in the future. Well, many countries around the world, they're going to be restricting the kind of motorcycles that are going to be used due to emissions, environmental impact. And many countries around the world now, in the next 8 to 10 years, they're going to be looking at stopping the sale of petrol and diesel driven motor vehicles, and these can include motorcycles as well. So they're really pushing the electric vehicle, but also they're going to be pushing, I suppose, engines that are not being driven or being propelled, let's say, whatever the term is, by fossil fuels. So they're probably going to be looking at alternative fuels for the conventional petrol or diesel engine, as it were. So this means that a company like Harley Davidson, they've got to look at 10 years into the future, and they've got to say, okay, if that regulation does apply, can we still sell these motorcycles? And will people be traveling the great distances? Can they afford it with current fuel prices and the projection of fuel prices, oil prices in the future? All these things are a factor, and you can actually see the argument to get rid of Tourers if they're not going to be used, if they're not going to be sold. Yes, right now they are a huge seller, but in 10 years the bottom may have fallen out of the market and they're not going to sell any. Now, for those of you out there who are wondering what the hell am I going on about, I am not suggesting for 1 minute that this was a serious discussion or a serious tabletop exercise, and I'm also not suggesting that Tourers are going to be eliminated from the Harley Davidson lineup within the next year or 2 years. Nothing of the sort, because they are a massive seller and they are very popular motorcycles as well. However, could they be eliminated from the lineup in the future? Yes, I could see that happening. I could see that happening, not because we as riders would not want a tourer motorcycle to go on long tours. It just might be that our riding habits may be completely different. Our mobility habits might be completely different in the future, and we just may not want a big tourer, or they may not be sold with a petrol engine, let's say, and so we've only got electric vehicles, and electric vehicles, it may make more sense to go on local journeys than to go on the grand tours. Now, that doesn't mean that the grand tours won't happen anymore, of course, you know, using older bikes, but I'm just saying the sale of new bikes to facilitate that kind of riding activity. So there you go. This is a reason why companies make these kinds of decisions. They project into the future. They look at what could happen. They look at, yes, current trends, but they're also making their own minds up, and they're looking at data from the environment, from current legislation, politics. All these things do play a part in the decisions that they make, the kinds of products that they produce, and the R&D into new products as well. So, and whether, of course, whether they continue to sell a particular product that may be very popular now, but obviously may not be popular in the future. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. It is a discussion, I'm sure, that they will be having in the future, as in Harley Davidson, as many other companies around the world will be having as well, about what they're going to be doing in the future and what kind of products they'll be selling. And maybe the current high flyers, let's say, will not be high flying anymore, and that's the reason that they'll cut them and go with something else. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, like and share. Check out the website RevelatorAlf.com. Let us know your comments. Let us know what you think about this. Harley Davidson scrapping Tourers in the future. Could it even happen?